and I'll give you a little more into that, but why did we come here? We didn't come here for political reasons. We came here for economic opportunities. And the idea of working for yourself and being totally responsible for your living, it was basic to the way I grew up. My dad never had a job. Wow. He never worked for somebody else for a paycheck. We worked off the land, and if we wanted to eat, we worked the land. If we wanted to stay warm at night, we cut firewood. So we did what we had to do to survive. And it was with that intent that we came to this country as a result of major floods in southern Italy that basically wiped out everything we had. So when we got here, none of us, family of 6, none of us knew a word of English. But I had an aunt and a cousin that absolutely committed themselves to teach us English. We got here in June, and by September, myself and my brother and 2 sisters knew enough English to get into school, barely. Well, anyways, to not get back down on that one, in 5 years, I managed to get through high school. And 4 years later, I got a degree from Syracuse University. And to me, going through that process, it was very difficult to experience what I saw, particularly in college. Because I worked my butt off, paid for everything. I didn't know anything about loans, grants, scholarships. I worked for every penny I needed to pay my school with. And 2 weeks after graduation from Syracuse, I got married, paid $2,500 down on a house because I didn't want to owe somebody else rent. I wanted to pay my own way. And I did that for years. However, working in industry after probably 15, 20 years, I became conditioned to the fact that I was an employee for somebody else. And to my dad, that was so foreign. And I didn't realize how badly I was conditioned to work for somebody else until I was, let's say, in corporate world, 3rd level management from the bottom. So it took me some time to get back to my roots and say, what the heck did I come to this country for? My dad died being frustrated because neither I or my brother took control of our own lives. We worked always for somebody else. And May's going to talk a little more about that. I became conditioned and became a slave, basically, to the paycheck and to the employer that employed me. There's nothing wrong with that. But what had happened, he kept me back from focusing on what I needed to do. Apply my knowledge, my skills for my family. And a paycheck, most of the time, was not enough. I've been downsized since early 90s, but I've done whatever I had to do since then to survive. The idea of government handouts is so foreign to me. And one more thing about this, I'll continue on. The part of Italy I came from, southern Italy, is very different than the rest of Italy, mainly because it's an old Greek colony, basically. And the Greeks colonized that part of Italy to get away from Greece in some of the wars they had. But I and most of the people in southern Italy always had this independence, away from central government, and on and on and on. But the main thing I think that relates to America is Italy has the George Washington, and some of you may have heard of him, Joseph Garibaldi. He was a soldier, just like Washington was. But he was not the person that I looked up to. Who I looked up to was an individual that had been exiled because what he wanted to unite Italy was not under a king, but as a republic, just like America had done about 100 years earlier. See, Italy didn't get to be united until 1870. So the person that wanted to unite Italy under a republic rather than a king was exiled for 20 years in France, or somewhere in there. He died about 3 days after the unification of Italy came about. So I've always had this thing about the difference between working for yourself or have somebody take charge of your central government versus independent. Always do what you gotta do. Anyways, to moving on, things about college. Like I said, I worked and met my wife. We were going steady then, but I hardly ever saw. We didn't go to actually we went to one football game, or maybe two. Was it two? It was two. Because my priority was to earn the money I needed to get through school. And what bothered me then were three things, primarily during the college years. Because by then I had learned enough of the English. Number one was the civil rights movement. I said, wow, why did that bother you? I'll tell you. Second one was the riots that was going on the college campuses. And the third one was the majority of my classmates were lazy. Lazy because they didn't have a job, most of them. They were more involved in extracurricular activities rather than studying. And in many cases, I got better grades than they did. And I did not understand why so many of my classmates were so lazy. And until many years later, when I began to understand the culture a little better. This country has it too easy. And I think us parents had made it too easy for them. We need to earn our own way if we get to value what we have. Anyways, so what did I do? One of my things that I did most of mainly to brush up on my English, I took speech classes. And during those speech classes, most of my topics were, why is it that we have these riots? Why is it that we have this civil rights stuff going on when the Constitution, which I had read about as a kid in Southern Italy, and on my own once I got here, what the heck is going on? I did not understand what that was all about when the government that was established by the founding fathers of this country did not prohibit this stuff from going on. And what you hear a little bit tonight, for those of you who don't know, all blacks were freed and the right to vote back in 1861 or 62, right after the war. But for some reason, between 1865, 1870 to 1960s, there were things going on in this country that, to me, they were totally, totally foreign. I came to a country believing that everybody here was equal to work and achieve for themselves, and they were not prohibited from doing anything as long as it was legal. And what I saw was black people not able to eat wherever they wanted or ride in a bus wherever they sat.